So for the first time in my lifetime, our allies are openly questioning whether the United States would stand by them in their time of need. Well, to be fair, that's happening in both directions, as President Trump just stated yesterday that he doesn't think NATO would ever be there for us. And not to be overly dramatic, but one of the major takeaways from Davos this week seems to be the real-time fracturing of the post-World War II order. In fact, Ukrainian President Zelensky kind of hit the nail on the head earlier today in his speech, where he asked the question, would the United States actually come to the defense of their allies?
Europe needs united armed forces that can truly defend Europe. Today, Europe relies only on the belief that if danger comes, NATO will act. But no one has really seen the alliance in action. If Putin decides to take Lithuania or strike Poland, who will respond? Who will respond? Right now, NATO exists thanks to belief that the United States will act, that it will not stand aside and will help. But what if it doesn't?
And that might come across as alarmist. I get it. I would argue that it's realistic. Anybody that's relying on any form of security guarantee needs to ask the question of what if it actually isn't followed through with. But in this case, less than 24 hours prior, on that very same stage, U.S. President Trump said he doesn't think NATO would be there for us.
I don't know that they'd be there for us. They're not there for us on Iceland, that I can tell you. Our stock market took the first dip yesterday because of Iceland. So Iceland's already cost us a lot of money. But that dip is peanuts compared to what it's gone up.
Now, a couple points to add some context. The president there was talking about Greenland, not Iceland. He did mix up those terms a couple times throughout the course of his speech. But this is the kind of thing, this talk, right? You don't have to see like a formal dissolution of NATO. Just this amount of cold water, the questioning in both directions or every direction of will this alliance actually hold up to the test is enough to make it useless. There are other security alliances around the world that we do not hear much about because the general assumption is it's not actually going to do anything. Russia heads the CSTO, right? When was the last time anyone was concerned that if Russia was attacked, the CSTO might come together, invoke their version of Article 5, and go after, say, Ukraine? It's not even in the conversation, right? This type of talk moves NATO into that camp. Right? If our allies, specifically, or our adversaries, specifically in this case Russia, views NATO as nothing more than a piece of paper that will not be backed up by actions, then that's all it is a piece of paper, and it loses all of its value. Now, Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, also gave a speech a little more realistic here, talking about kind of saying, like, it's already happened, now we're moving on. And I'll link his full speech in the description below. It's about 15 minutes if you want to watch. And it did get a pretty significant response because just about everybody looked at this and said, he's talking about the United States and the fracturing with the United States and how Canada needs to find a new path forward.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
And it does seem like Canada has started to take those actions. I don't like it. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be the best for Canada long term, but we have seen them sign some strategic arrangements with China just in the course of the last couple of days, maybe weeks. And that's going to happen. All these countries are going to act in their self-interest. I think Carney did a really good job of saying, again, in the full speech, hey, we grew up under this international order that we knew wasn't perfect and we knew wasn't always fair, but it allowed us to operate in a way that we all became richer. We became better off. Everybody, all of the countries kind of in the U.S. umbrella did better. Now that's falling apart, and we can't rely on that anymore, so we need to find a better path forward. In fact, Ukrainian President Zelensky really kind of pushed on that, taking aim, from my opinion, at Europe, saying, you're just not doing enough.
Just last year, here in Davos, I ended my speech with the words, Europe needs to know how to defend itself. A year has passed, and nothing has changed.
Now, surprisingly, Zelensky actually spoke up about Greenland quite a bit here, and more on what is actually happening with Greenland in a second. But one of the points you raised is like, hey, everybody's just kind of hoping that this is one of Trump's things, that it happens and then it fades away. But he says, what if it doesn't? What are we going to do then?
Everyone turned attention to Greenland. And it's clear most leaders simply are not sure what to do about it. And it seems like everyone is just waiting for America to cool down on this topic, hoping it will pass away. But what if will not? What then?
He also kind of lashed out at Europe here, talking about the troop deployments to Greenland, the 14 to 40 or whatever the number is, the recon elements that have gone there, saying that's sending the wrong message. It's sending the wrong message to Putin. It's sending the wrong message to Denmark. It's sending the wrong message to the United States.
And if you send 30 or 40 soldiers to Greenland, what is that for? What message does it send? What's the message to Putin, to China? And even more importantly, what message does it send to Denmark? The most important, your close ally.
And I'm kind of mixed on that one for what it's worth. I do think there was a rational response by Europe to send forces there to, look, it wasn't a recon to defend against the United States. It was a symbolism of saying we stand with Denmark from the European allies' perspective. You can't deploy a brigade overnight. That's just not technically, yes, it can be done. In this case, probably wasn't in the cards. So over the course of the next few weeks and months, I would expect that we see more NATO troops flow into Greenland. But yeah, understand the criticism of so few flowing in at that time. One of the things I really liked from Zelensky's speech today was saying, hey, you guys need help with Russian warships off the coast of Greenland? Why don't you talk to the experts?
And we know what to do. If Russian warships are sailing freely around Greenland, Ukraine can help. We have the expertise and weapons to ensure not one of those ships remains. They can sink near Greenland just as they do near Crimea.
Right now, in terms of the whole Greenland thing, I'm not even sure this is going to get a full video because, quite frankly, it feels like we just wasted our time talking about all of this when it was completely unnecessary. So last night, President Trump said that he had a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and that they came to this agreement for like the framework of a possible plan that could be executed at some point in the future. To be clear, it is completely unknown what that deal is made up of. All right, it's like the plans to put together a plan to talk about a possible plan. All right, entirely possible. All of that comes back to exactly what's already been agreed upon with Denmark. And notably, the agreement that was mentioned yesterday was not between the United States and Denmark, but between the United States and NATO, which NATO can't negotiate on Denmark or Greenland's behalf. So for now, the tariffs are off that President Trump threatened against our European allies for standing with Greenland and standing with Denmark. It's very possible this was all a big nothing in terms of what the U.S. gets out of it. But in the meantime, we may have just frayed a lot of our alliances even more. So not ideal. But we do have a few more here from President Zelensky and Mark Carney. But first, a quick thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Fabric by Gerber Life. Hey, grown-up talk here for a minute. If you have anyone in your life that depends on you financially, even just a little bit, like children, parents, spouse, grandparents, anyone at all, you should really, honestly consider getting life insurance. This isn't about you, it's about them. And with the sponsor of today's video, Fabric by Gerber Life, you can get that taken care of pretty quick. Fabric by Gerber Life is term life insurance that you can get done today. Made for busy parents like you, all online on your schedule right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes with no health exam required. Now, personally, I picked up a few term life insurance policies in recent years. The main reason I did that was my old employer did offer life insurance, but it wasn't enough for what I wanted to leave my family in the event something unexpected should happen. Then I left that job, so I had to pick up more term life insurance to cover that gap. Now, if you're young and healthy, locking in lower rates now can make a real difference over the long term, and there's no risk. Fabric has a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can cancel at any time. It's not like something you're locked into for the rest of your life. So join the thousands of parents that trust Fabric to protect their families. Apply today at meetfabric.com/Preston. That's meetfabric.com/Preston. And thank you so much to Fabric for sponsoring today's video. Now, Zelensky actually kind of dialed in his focus on Europe here, where, he went after the recent shadow fleet seizures by the United States, picking up Russian shadow fleets. And I'm saying, like, why is the United States doing this and not Europe? Let's go. Let's step up.
That is the problem. Why can't President Trump stop tankers from the shadow fleet and seize oil, but Europe doesn't?
Now, to be fair, since that speech was made, news came out that France has seized a Russian oil tanker. The first one, I don't know how long, shadow fleet tanker. So not a lot of details on that one yet, but the timing kind of lines up there. Zelensky frustrated about it. Seemingly, as he was in the middle of giving that speech, France was actually boarding a tanker. So maybe we'll see more movement in that direction. But Zelensky also pointed to, again, a lot of frustration at Europe, pointing at the United States, saying the U.S. is able to do these things. Europe needs to be able to do these things. He says, hey, in Venezuela, the United States went after, picked up Maduro. He's now standing trial. We're 4 years into a war, and Putin's just walking around freely. What's going on here?
Let's look at the Western Hemisphere. President Trump led an operation in Venezuela, and Maduro was arrested. And there were different opinions about it. But the fact remains, Maduro is on trial in New York. Sorry, but Putin is not on trial. And this is the fourth year of the biggest war in Europe since World War II. And the man who started it is not only free, he is still fighting for his frozen money in Europe.
Now, in fairness, comparing Maduro to Putin falls short in a lot of ways, right? We're talking about, again, a nuclear power with Russia. As much as we see penetration of their air defense left, right, and center, I don't think there's any realistic path for a helicopter to fly into Moscow anytime soon, land at the Kremlin, and pick up Putin. So I get the frustration. Bigger picture, this is more about how is Putin still being treated as like a normal person on the international stage when Maduro is now behind bars. And to that end, we've got this peace council thing, kind of lines up with this reshaping of the world post-World War II order. It's this idea that appears to be like reshaping or creating a new United Nations. Russia was invited. Belarus was invited. Right now, there's like 30 countries that have signed on. They had a signing ceremony this morning. Notably, I think Hungary joined. Hungary, maybe Turkey. Those would be the only NATO allies that have signed on so far. And a lot of the pushback is that it looks like this is designed to kind of take the place of NATO, with President Trump listed as the kind of chairman for life. So after he leaves office, he'll still be in charge of this, and has the ability, from my understanding, to remove anybody as he sees fit. There is an entrance fee, from what I've come across, $1 billion for countries to come in. If they don't pay that, then they're on like probationary status for a few years. Putin just yesterday said, hey, we'll pay that $1 billion out of the frozen funds in the United States. So you can see kind of the direction that is headed. But again, it kind of points to what Zelensky is getting at there of why is Putin still being regarded as like a normal, legitimate leader when Maduro is behind bars. I can get the frustration. And to that end, Zelensky says, hey, look, and this is kind of where we're going with Carney here in a second. He said it's time for Europe to take lead. If this world order is fracturing, he's calling on Europe to stand up, take lead in so many different categories, and saying the time is now.
Instead of becoming a truly global power, Europe remains a beautiful but fragmented kaleidoscope of small and middle powers. Instead of taking the lead in defending freedom worldwide, especially when America's focus shifts elsewhere, Europe looks lost, trying to convince the US president to change. But he will not change. President Trump loves who he is. And he says he loves Europe, but he will not listen to this kind of Europe.
And to kind of drive that home, he makes the point that, it's Ukraine defending itself now, but tomorrow it very well could be Europe. I think he's spot on with this message, but personally, I don't know how well this has landed really anywhere outside of Ukraine at this point, but it's still worth hitting whenever you can.
Today we need that power to protect our own independence. But you need Ukraine's independence too, because tomorrow you may have to defend your way of life.
Now, at this point, it's been a lot of talk, a lot of here's what we should do, here's what we can do. And for the most part, that's what came out of Davos, to be clear, is a lot of high-minded, we need to move on, we need to replace this world order, whether it's the United States saying we're going to replace this and we're going to stay up top and we're going to do things the way we want to do everything, kind of a might makes right type mentality in President Trump's speech yesterday, or from some of our European partners talking about kind of shifting away, maybe more of a European centric alliance or some way to kind of stand up and be able to push back at times against the United States. But Mark Carney here, I think, went a step further, which is another reason why I think his speech got a lot of attention, where he says just point blank, like, we are moving on. We're not like still in the process of figuring out what's happening here. We are moving on, and wraps up by saying, who's coming with us?
We understand that this rupture calls for more than adaptation. It calls for honesty about the world as it is. We are taking the sign out of the window. We know the old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy. But we believe that from the fracture, we can build something bigger, better, stronger, more just. This is the task of the middle powers. The countries that have the most to lose from a world of fortresses and the most to gain from genuine cooperation. The powerful have their power. But we have something too. The capacity to stop pretending, to name reality, to build our strength at home, and to act together. That is Canada's path. We choose it openly and confidently, and it is a path wide open to any country willing to take it with us. Thank you very much.
So again, I don't want to be overly dramatic with all of this. And this kind of stuff, like the reshaping of the entire world order, takes time, right? It's not something that gets hashed out at a week in Davos, but the parts are all moving in that direction. And while Greenland seems to have dialed back for now, like I never thought, and I think we voiced that pretty clearly, I never thought military action was on the table, but seemed like we were going to try to do something to kind of force an annexation there. Fortunately, that's off the table for now, but look at the damage done there, or maybe the impact, if you think it was the right. Look, personally, I don't think the moves around Greenland were the right move. I think we're going to end up in the same spot that we were. We could have done a lot more than we already were doing. I think this was an unnecessary way to damage relationships. But even if you view that as the right path and the right direction, that we approached it in the right manner, it is leading to a decrease in trust in the United States. And I think the most tangible way of showing that is seeing so many world leaders at Davos stand up talking about creating their own new system and separating themselves from the United States. We've started to see minor sell-offs, all things considered, in U.S. bonds. I don't know if we'll see a continuation there or not, but no doubt some of these European allies that we have listed as our in Canada, listed as some of our closest, most secure allies, friends, over the course of the last 70 years, are now looking for alternatives. It might work out well for them. It might not. It might work out well for the United States. It might not. Something I just want to be very clear on is the direction we're heading is completely unknown. Again, the world that all of us have grown up in since 1949, so I know everybody watching this video has grown up since 1949. I see the stats on YouTube, all right? We got the demographics. I know there's very, very few people that would have been alive pre-1949 to really understand what the world was like at that point. We're stepping into a complete unknown. So just recognize that. Whether you're cheering on this break between the United States and Europe or cheering on a new direction that the United States is heading, it is stepping into a complete unknown. And again, personal opinion, I don't think that this is wise. I don't think we have a good follow-on plan in place. We're kind of just scrapping everything and hoping that the next step is better rather than having a clear desired outcome. But wherever you fall on that, let's hope that wherever we end up on the backside here ends up better than where we came. That's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.